your first 5 years teaching, you're conducting these pieces for the first time, a whole suite or Russian Christmas music or something like that, where, now I look back and I've done it 10 times, and you get better at it, and you learn more, and you grow from your professional development and your visits to conferences and getting a chance to see other groups. I mean, I've been going to Midwest my entire career. This December will be number 22 for me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer and educator, and each week I have the good fortune to speak with and share the stories and wisdom of musicians and leaders in the band community. Are you planning to travel with your group sometime soon? If so, please consider my sponsor, Kaleidoscope Adventures, a full-service tour company specializing in student group travel. With a former educator as its CEO, Kaleidoscope Adventures is dedicated to changing student lives through travel, and they offer high-quality service and an attention to detail that comes from more than 25 years of student travel experience. Trust Kaleidoscope's outstanding staff to focus on your group's one-of-a-kind adventure so that you can focus on everything else. The Everything Band podcast is a proud member of the Music Teachers Development Podcast Network. The Muted Network provides support in the form of audio-on-demand programming designed by and for music educators. You can find more information about our network at mutedpodcasts.com. Before we begin, I'd like to thank all of you for listening. I appreciate your time and hope that you are finding value from these interviews. I rely on word of mouth and social media to bring the show to new listeners. If you think you knew one or two people who might find these interviews useful, please let them know about it. You can also help by following me and sharing posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Remember, help your students live up to the best that is in them through music. And now on to my next guest, Keith Hodgson. Hi, Keith.
Hi, how are you, Mark?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So, Keith, can you just introduce yourself to the listeners? Tell them all what you're about.
Sure. My name is Keith Hodgson. I live in South Jersey, just outside of Atlantic City. And I taught in New Jersey for 26 years as a high school band director, the majority of which was at Mainland High School, just outside Atlantic City. I'm currently the director of music education at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia, where I teach conducting, percussion methods, and oversee student teachers, and the Masters of Arts in Teaching certification program. I'm currently the Eastern Division president for the National Association of Music Education. I'm a Ensemble educational clinician, and I conduct a community ensemble called the South Jersey Area Wind Ensemble. And in the summer times, I travel to Europe as the head director of the American Music Abroad Gold Tour.
Can you tell everyone your origin story? How did you get involved in music as a child?
Well, I started playing piano as a child around kindergarten. My mom was my first piano teacher. I actually didn't care for practicing the piano, most of my third, fourth, fifth grade. I wanted to quit, but my parents wouldn't let me quit unless I started another instrument. So I started playing drums after fifth grade. And I did take trumpet lessons in fourth grade, but there was no band experience in South Jersey where I lived at the time. So we moved to North Jersey in the middle of fifth grade and into the community of Kinnelon in Morris County, New Jersey. And at that time, I joined the middle school band in sixth grade. And so I didn't really have the fourth, fifth grade elementary band experience.
Was your mom a musician teaching you piano?
She played piano a bit and also violin. And she was a twin, and her twin sister, when they were in school, played cello and piano. So there was music in the house. We had a piano, of course. My dad also played the piano, and they were very supportive musically.
Yeah. Can you talk about your high school experience? Sort of lead me up to the time when you decided, okay, I'm going to go into music as a professional.
Well, I had lots of great opportunities and motivations in middle school with the middle school band and my private drum teacher, Al Muller. I like playing with the garage rock bands in middle school and high school. We rehearsed at my house. Again, my parents were very supportive of our basement being the rehearsal site for our bands. When I was in high school, the program at the time was really quite involved. They had, we were kids making all state band, and there was a competitive marching band. It was a really solid concert band program, fun jazz program, of course. And, I liked all the aspects of the high school program, and it really kind of sucked me in. But in particular, I had a teacher, Jim Miller, who was the marching band director, young, very enthusiastic and motivating. And it was his influence that I think I wanted to go into music education and be a band director. So I think I credit him, and also he was good friends with composer Steve Malillo, who also came and worked with our band and wrote our marching band shows at the time. And two of them were very, very influential and motivating.
So how about, going to college and being a music ed student? I know you went to William Patterson. So can you tell me a little bit about your experience kind of as you began training to be a teacher?
Yeah, so I went to William Patterson, was a very strong percussion program. Ray DeRoche, the longtime percussion professor there, and I had one of the best percussion programs in the country. So I was fortunate. I lived nearby. I actually commuted my first year to William Patterson. It's only about a 20-minute ride. And I had great theory teachers at William Patterson. But I think in my preparation to be a high school band director, I knew I needed to get some things outside of my undergrad experience. And two that that were probably the most formative were playing with the Ridgewood Concert Band, which was a community band conducted by Chris William, really one of the premier concert bands in the country. I played with them for 5 years, and I still remember playing so much literature like Lincoln Portrait and Rocky Point Holiday and stuff like that. And having guest soloists like Phil Smith and Joe Alessi, Harvey Phillips from New York, they were regular guest soloists with Ridgewood. So that was just a tremendous, and it was literally 15 minutes away from my college. So it was right in the area. The other formative piece was marching with a drum corps, a senior corps. I never had the fortune of marching with a DCI corps, but I did march 5 years with the Bushwhackers DCA drum corps, and we won the DCA championship 3 of the 5 years that I marched. So it was a really good time to march with that group. But it also, coming through college, is what helped set me up to be a successful high school band director just coming right out of college.
Yeah, I love that you took that on yourself, that you knew that you needed that experience to be a successful teacher, and that you went and sought out that experience. That's a good lesson for young musicians, or maybe advice we can give to our own students.
Yeah.
All right, Keith. So how about the first 2 jobs? I know that, looking at your resume, you taught at a couple schools before you ended up at Mainland. Can you talk about your early career?
Yeah. So nearby William Patterson, one of my first jobs was at Pompton Lakes High School. I was there for 2 years, and it was a small band program, but did a lot with them. Took them on a band trip and away to band camp, and a couple different competitive marching band seasons. Started to develop a lesson program and a concert band with them, but then had the opportunity to move to Sussex County, Vernon Township, up to the top of North Jersey. Had a larger concert band program, and it was nice to step into that and something that was a little bit more well established at the time, and get a chance to do some material that I wanted to do with a concert band. Although that marching band was not a competitive marching band, it was just a football group, and was able to take them to their first music festival, marching festival, and so the kids could get a taste of what it was like to actually, play side by side in a competition type setting. It wasn't really a competition, but a festival. And you could see how motivating it was for students who had never been a part of that before. So That was neat. I was there for 3 years, and after that, moved down to South Jersey Mainland Regional High School, which is just 8 miles outside of Atlantic City. And I spent the next 21 years building a program from the bottom up there.
Excellent. And so what lessons from those first jobs, one of the things beginning teachers, we know we learn a lot of important lessons in our first couple of years, usually the hard way. What lessons did you take from those jobs to the job at Mainland High School that you were at for so long?
I think just the ability to try things out for the first time, and reflecting on how it goes, and working to do it better the next time. As with everything, with more experience, you make better decisions, and the quality of the program improves. And I think I was able to be so successful in my third job, and especially so quickly in terms of building a program from almost nothing to having quite large numbers in a really short amount of time, was because I was able to have tried out the things that I was doing already in 2 other programs. So,
yeah. One of the things that I think that this show does is it kind of gives people a chance to connect outside of conferences. And so I just want to kind of give myself a little plug here, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I just started, for all the listeners, I just started a group on Facebook. If you want to chat with former guests, if you want to chat with me, if you want to ask each other questions, if you want to continue the discussion, just go to the Facebook page for Everything Band, and you can find a link to the group. Sorry, Keith, I just needed to get that in there.
No problem. Fantastic.
So, Keith, so tell me about that job at Mainland, and what did your program look like? You were there for 21 years, so that's a significant chunk of time. What was that program like?
Well, when I took it over, it was dwindled to nothing. The former director had kind of let it had stopped recruiting for the 3 years before. The program that was kind of a big marching band back in the 70s and 80s. Dwindled down to about 19. I think I had 19 people when I took the job in June. And by making a lot of phone calls and recruiting to get a band on the field, I think I had 50 on the field for my first year, 1995. And I think I had a total of 38 that had signed up for band, a concert band class, which there really wasn't one before. Prior to that, it was, it was all about the marching band. And coming into this job, I knew, and my philosophy was that I wanted to make the concert band the center of the program. In just 1 year, that 38 went to 65 for my concert band class, and it went to 95 the third year, and it went to 120 the fourth year. Actually, when it was at 95, we got the school to split bands, so we went to 2 bands. And then once it got up to 135, 40, we split to 3 bands. And in the next couple of years, it continued to climb almost to about 200 in probably a total of 6 years, from the 19 to 200. It did take a bell curve at that point. It was the highest it was, and it kind of settled in the years later at about 130. We still maintained the 3 concert bands: a concert band, a symphonic band, and a wind ensemble. A wind ensemble is all auditioned each year. We feed 3. Mainland Regional is a regional high school for 3 communities. So Linwood, Northfield, and Summers Point, which are the 3 towns just on the mainland from Atlantic City, which is out on an island. So we're located just 8 miles outside of Atlantic City. Those 3 towns feed Mainland. All freshmen, eventually, we're all feeding into just the concert band program, just to kind of get them all on the same page with, with scales, with being able to follow a conductor, and all the technical proficiencies you want to implement in the curriculum, just to get it. Because when you have 3 different there are 3 different K-8 districts, so there is no music supervisor. There, unlike a K-12 district, where you could have a curriculum aligned, there is no alignment of curriculum in that scenario. So three middle schools doing things 3 completely different ways and using different methods and so on and so forth. So Um, the marching band, we maintained a very competitive marching band, and won 2 state championships in 2005 and 6. Those were the last 2 years that I did marching band as the marching band director. We developed 2 jazz ensembles. We also hired another second band director about maybe 4 years in. I was there about right once the numbers went close to 100. We put in for a second band director and got that approved. And so the rest of my time there, probably the next 15 years, I taught with a colleague, several different colleagues along the way, but having that second band director was a great team. We had chamber ensembles of all kinds. We were pushed the kids to go out for ensemble, honors ensembles, county, region, all-state groups. We also encouraged them to do side-by-side collaborations with, we have a community band, and we do an annual side-by-side with students. Many of the colleges in our area, College of New Jersey, Rutgers, Rowan, also have collegiate honor bands once a year, and having the kids go be a part of that kind of thing, as well as musical travel and summer music camps. I think outside of our program, having these opportunities for the students to thrive were really important. And the rest of the music program was also a big part of it. It's not just the band, but the chorus and string. We developed a string program and hired a string teacher. We all started guitar classes and keyboard classes, and at one point we were running 5 sections of guitar and 5 sections of keyboard, which is very important in helping to address the music education needs of the other 80% in the school that weren't in our performance classes. Music theory, AP theory. My Triumph Music Honor Society, I was the advisor for that, and love that aspect of teaching when I was there, because the students, most of those students who went into music over my time were also very active in the leadership of Triumph, and whether they were the Triumph president or not, officers or logging hours, service hours, being student mentors to the program. That was really helpful, and especially performing in the community. It was a big advocacy piece of our Triumph initiatives. So yeah, it was really a thriving program. I mean, you think back at 1995, I had 19 kids, and when I left just a couple years ago, and it's my colleague is maintaining it today. The 3 concert bands, the marching band, the 2 jazz ensembles, and the marching band has in the last couple of years has gone to an outside director. Somebody, it's not my colleague who teaches actually there full time, but the marching band has found a lot of success, especially this year. Was undefeated and won not only their state but their national championship in their circuit group. So things are still cranking there, and I'm happy to see it maintained.
Keith, how about your new role at UArts? So when did you leave Mainland, and how was that decision, and what are you doing now?
Well, I wasn't thinking of leaving my K-12 or my public school teaching job. And the opportunity, the woman, Beth Sokolowski, who was teaching at University of the Arts in charge of the music ed program, had been working for about 8 years to build the program, change the program, and had built it to the point where she needed another full-time music ed person, and reached out to me to actually post it on the New Jersey Music Educators Facebook group that I had started years before, and knowing that she wanted to help spread the word about this music position, and I ended up within 20 minutes actually sending her my resume, and not seriously thinking about wanting to do that or go that direction, but when you don't need a job, it's fun to throw your hat in the ring and do that. So I did, and a couple of months later, when they were starting to do the phone interviews, I had a phone interview, had a second phone interview. I still really wasn't thinking seriously about doing it. and then eventually it was said I was one of the top 3 candidates to come on campus for interviews and in person. And so I did. I set up a day to go in. Had to take a sick day to go do it. But and again, I still wasn't seriously thinking about doing this. I loved my job. I loved my band program, teaching music theory. I was also teaching guitar, and I loved all the things that I was doing. But when I went to University of the Arts for that visitation day, I just really enjoyed everybody that I met. I ended up having like 6 or 7 interviews that day. I mean, you met with the provost and the president and the department chair. There was a full-time lunch with all the full-time faculty, which is an interview, right? I had to give a 45-minute teaching demo lesson to the MAT master's group cohorts. While some of the faculty sat in the back of the room, watching and looking over your stuff, and it was a full day. It was like from 11 to in the morning till 7 at night, and I think I had an interview almost every hour of the day. But none of them really felt like interviews. They felt like just a sit down conversation. I felt like they were trying to court me as much as I was trying to leave my best impression as well. And so I wasn't nervous at all during the day, which I think said something. And when I was driving home that night, that was the very first time I thought about maybe making a life change, a job change. Here I'm going to give up a 10-year job and move into a higher ed position. So it's a big decision. But I was very motivated by everybody I met. I liked everybody. Truly liked everybody that I met. I'm just very laid back and cool. And so, but the biggest thing was coming home and actually talking to my wife about it. And without her support, my wife, by the way, is also a high school band director. And so we've both been high school band directors our whole career. And that's great. But she's been 100% supportive of my decision, and was from the very beginning, and still is. So, in terms of what I do, I'm in charge of now the Masters of Arts in Teaching program, which is a master's degree and certification program in music education. What's something that's very unique about University of the Arts? It's mainly a performance school. Most of the undergrad programs, I mean, there are some composition majors, and there is a new embed program. I would say half our school of music is part of the music business and entrepreneurship degree. But the other half is it's all performance and focused on jazz. So the ability level of the students at UArts is really off the charts. I'm blown away and amazed at the talent level by everybody there every day, as well as the faculty. So it's a neat place to be. But there is a music education minor, which is kind of like all the pedagogy classes, all the instrument classes, psychology of music, basic conducting, field work 1 and 2, observation hours, as well as music for special needs 1 and 2. That kind of makes up the music ed minor. So when our performance majors graduate with their performance degree as an undergrad, they can also have a music ed minor along with that. And then they can stay a 5th year. We call it the +5. And in 1 year, they get put into an elementary cohort and a secondary cohort for a semester. And then they switch cohorts the second semester. And the way it's set up is they do 7 weeks of intensive classwork, and then followed by a 7-week student teaching placement in that cohort. When they come back in January and we switch cohorts, they come back in the classroom for another 7 weeks, but now all the coursework is geared towards a secondary and preparing you to go into your second student teaching placement. And then it's over. So it's a very unique program. I like A couple reasons I really like it. I like the fact that when they're student teaching, they're at least fifth year students versus fourth year. And I think the maturity level is huge from the fourth to fifth year. We also have a number of students that come from other institutions, other schools, who come to our MAT program for that certification piece. Maybe their undergrad was just music degree, but it wasn't necessarily music education. And so sometimes I have 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds that are in the cohorts with the 23-year-olds, and that elevates the maturity level as well, and the dynamic that I think is very unique to what we do. And I think we're also preparing the students to also be very well-rounded, both not only in choral and instrumental, but in the general music area. And we have some outstanding teachers and professors that are helping prepare. My colleague, Jenny Neff, is a former middle school band director for 25 years. She and I like to say that between the two of us, we have over 50 years of classroom experience that we're giving to our students at University of the Arts. So we like that aspect. In addition to that, so I do all the student teaching placements and student teaching observations, not all of them, but a good handful of them. And running the student teaching seminars. I also teach undergraduate conducting and graduate conducting, as well as percussion methods class as one of our undergrad courses, and the field work courses in the undergrad as well. So that's what I do at University of the Arts.
Yeah, Jenny was guest number 52 on this show.
Ah.
What sort of lessons do you try to pass along to your music education cohort, even the master's students or even those minors who go into that certification? What lessons from your career are you trying to pass on to them that you think are most important?
Planning, setting goals. Obviously with preparing student teachers, learning how to plan, not only just lesson plans, but just being a planning and a reflective teacher. We talk about the reflective piece quite often. Being organized and taking care of details, those are great qualities in a good teacher. I think building relationships and teaching them to connect with people is probably the root of everything. I mean, it's so important. Not just your students and their parents and your administrators, and those are the ones that first come to mind, but the community, your local music dealers, and as well as mentors and your colleagues in your field. I think we tend to do that as music educators when we go to conferences in Midwest and things like that, because we build connections with people. Because we're in cohorts in our program, there's a lot of collaboration. So that collaboration piece is a great part of what we do, and hopefully they'll continue to do that as teachers. The professional development piece, kind of keeping that in the forefront and trying to get them to do it now as even as college students. Like a couple of weeks ago, we excused them from student teaching one day to have them all go to Pennsylvania. Two of the districts were hosting professional development I think it was on election day, and they were reaching out to college students and student teachers. And we definitely took advantage of that. And they were highly motivated by all that. The other thing that we're trying to do a lot of is put extra emphasis and focus on the secondary instruments in our program. When they were in the minor, they had a semester of flute or trumpet, percussion, violin, so on and so forth. But in the MAT, we have a lab on Tuesday mornings where we get them back on their secondary instruments for, say, 3 weeks on one instrument, and then we have them switch instruments and take another instrument for 3 weeks. And we'll do that again in the spring, so that throughout the year, they at least get their hands on at least 4 different instruments and play in our lab situation that we have, which Jenny and I and my colleague Matt Gallagher, with 3 of us, all co-teach that together with 11 students and 3 instructors. It's it's pretty neat. And so it's nice that we're able to do that.
You talked about setting goals. And I think this is something I'd like to dig in a little bit more. So what do you mean by goals? Specific goals, long-term goals, both? How do you imagine that?
Yeah, everything. I think setting goals as a teacher, setting goals for your students on a weekly basis is important. I created my whole teaching career, I used what we call a portfolio, instrumental benchmark portfolio that the students all had. And along with that, they also had the lesson card where they had, each marking period, 4 boxes on one side of a card stock, and 4 on the other side where that was for their lessons, their weekly lessons that they attended. And as part of that, in each box, they had to set their goal. So teaching students how to set goals is an important part of the teaching that I did. And that they were, smart goals, right? They were specific and strategic. They were time bound and so forth. And I think involving the kids in doing that allows them to, I think, want to achieve their own goals versus just you setting goals for them. Although you have to oversee it. And it's just, again, it's a collaborative effort between students and the teacher when you set goals. In terms of the college students, obviously having goals for, where they are at this point, like getting a job, preparing themselves to be a candidate, a teacher candidate. There's all kinds of goals throughout the program. And we've helped mold that in our, what we call a capstone project, right? And so at the end of the MAT year, they've created a Google Drive, that they've organized it with different folders. And one of the things, just as an example, one of the folders is videos of them playing all their secondary instruments, just short little 30-second videos. But as they get their hands back on these secondary instruments, we want them to, have the goal of being able to play something, even something, little, on each instrument, and making little videos of it and keeping them in a folder and making it part of your capstone that they turn in at the end of the year. And there's all other requirements for that capstone as well, but that's one of the things that we're doing.
I think about this a lot because I'm back to teaching kids again after years of teaching theory. And one of the things I often told myself last year when I would get frustrated was that, I had put years of time in to master what it was to be a theory teacher, to have the whole comprehensive idea of what the subject looks like from day one to the end of the progression. And, getting back to being a beginning band teacher, I didn't have that overview of the whole process. And so for me, it was trying to figure out how to plan to get places when I wasn't necessarily quite sure where I was going because it had been so long since I had done it. And so I guess what I'm looking for is maybe some thoughts for the young teacher who's trying to plan and trying to figure this out and trying to find their way in through that curriculum, that setting up their daily teaching.
Well, I mentioned being a reflective teacher before. Of course, it took me about halfway through my career before I really became folks. I mean, maybe we were doing it subconsciously. You asked me about the first early years and, how that prepared me to be more successful, as you move into your third job and that sort of thing. But one of the things that I did about halfway through my career was I got involved with National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, and worked for National Board at the beginning of the music certificate, and then was a candidate myself. But one of the things that process taught me was about being a reflective teacher. And it really has to become part of every day and every class. But, you could look at, you just mentioned the bigger picture. At the end of every school year, I would also just literally sit down with a pad and kind of do a reflection of the whole year, all the aspects of the program, and then set goals for the next year. What do I want to achieve, just in the next year? One of the things that I do when I go around and visit some other schools now, and meet with music departments, a lot of times we sit down and do strategic planning. They have even a larger view, like where do we want to be in 5 years, and how do we want to get there, and what kinds of things do we need to put in place. And so, like I said, the setting of goals can be everything from a class, what you want to do tomorrow after reflecting on the class today, versus more that's long-term strategic planning goals. At the district, at a school district level, or even at an organization level, like say New Jersey Music Educators Association, we've gone through the strategic planning process a number of different times, and it's a very healthy thing to look at the organization and with other people and get a lot of people's input, and just kind of dig in on your beliefs and where you see the organization 5 years from now.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things I do, you talk about reflective teaching, is that I have a Google Doc, and I will type in it, once a week or once every 2 weeks, kind of like things about my teaching. Like, okay, this went well, this didn't go well, try not to do this next year. And then I review that at the end of every year. And I've been doing that even when I was a theory teacher. And it really helps a lot to have that sort of record. And you could do it right in your plan book. If you're someone who likes the pencil and paper in your plan book, you can write those things.
Right.
Yeah. So Keith, how about commissions? When you were a director for a long time, were you involved in anything where you had composers come in or you commissioned music?
Not so much with my high school band, but with my community band. We commissioned quite extensively for a long time. We started a community band in 1997, and we're now in our 23rd year of the South Jersey Area Wind Ensemble. One of the goals that I had for that as the conductor and the musical director was to commission new works. My friend Steve Malillo is a composer, probably one of the first self-published composers that we commissioned in 1999. But over the years, and we did it every year for at least 12 years before going other directions. Some of the other people that we commissioned was Patrick Burns, David Sloniker, who people may not know, but he writes motion picture film music in Los Angeles, and did a great work for us called Seascapes. Dean Sorensen, another friend of mine, who mostly known for his jazz method and writing his jazz charts. He teaches at University of Minnesota, but he did a concert band piece for us right after 9/11 called Tragedy and Valor. There's a composer named Russ Newberry did one. Anne McGinty did a beautiful arrangement of Greensleeves Fantasy that probably of all the commissions were probably one of my favorites. Our Key Poulon, also known for a lot of his marching band music and marching shows, but he did a concert work for us called Luminosity, which was a tribute to Thomas Edison. And since we're a New Jersey based community band, it was we were looking for something connecting with New Jersey. We have a local jazz arranger named Ed Vizino who has written a couple arrangements for us, more on the jazz side of a concert band work. William Sylvester as well. But after about 12 years, we realized we were putting out a lot of money in commissions that there were a lot of them were sitting on our shelf. Some were getting published, but the majority of them were not. And one of the reasons for commissioning was we wanted to, add to the literature out there and wanted to see them published. So the next thing we did is we did a couple commissioning contests. We ran 3 in 2010, 11, and 12 contests where we had people submit, and we had like 10 or 12 submissions. We had a chance to have the group play them all and actually had the community band vote on which piece they wanted as the winner and reasons why. We had a matrix and everything, but it was nice involving each and every member of the community band in making the decision. So that was neat. We've also done a 20th anniversary commission. After not commissioning for a while, we had our 20th anniversary a few years ago, and commissioned Brian Baumages, who did a work called Industrial Loops. And he, of course, had that published very quickly, and it was at Midwest within a few months. And I've actually done it with some guest conducting honor bands. That has worked out really well. And there's been a couple consortiums as well. One that my high school band did do, we did join a New Jersey all-state band consortium. There was a 75th anniversary commission from Dana Wilson for 15 schools to join in that commissioning. So we joined that to support that aspect. There was a commission for a Rhapsody for solo clarinet and band by Patrick Burns. That we haven't gotten a chance to play yet, but I'm looking forward to doing it someday soon. That was just a couple of years ago. And then recently, at the current moment, we're in, there's a Timothy Marr consortium that my dear friend Timothy Holton, who just retired from the Army Band, U.S. Army Band, he's going to be conducting the Music for All honor band, I think this March. And as part of that, Timothy Marr has been commissioned to do a 3-movement work for band that we've joined that consortium. And lastly, the Jeff Herwig, I guess, who was your guest just last Sunday, has just written a piece called Freedom for Wind Ensemble. And I jumped in and joined that consortium to support his efforts, because it was it's to support the Semper Fi Fund. So all the money was going to that. And really happy with the way it's turned out, and looking forward to performing that in later this year in June. So there's been a lot of projects, and got a chance to work with a lot of different composers and along the way.
So you've been involved in the community band for a long time. One of the things I think is interesting and I've talked about this with other guests too, most notably Patrick Dunnigan, is this idea of, how do we get more participation in community band from our students who, achieve so much in high school and college, then leave music and don't come to the community bands? Is there anything we can do to kind of increase participation, or is that just something that's what it is?
Yeah, one of the things that I don't like to think about is how many of my students stop playing their instrument after high school. It's got to be mind-boggling, because it's probably a very, very high percentage. But in my community band, I do have a good handful of former students from many years back, that are playing in it. There's all different. I think there's a need for all different types of community bands. Some are a little bit more high powered, cutting edge. They're doing national conferences and Midwest and things like that. But you've got other community bands that, maybe mostly students. And there's a need for those community bands too. It's nice when you're part of the Association of Concert Bands, the ACB, you start to realize and learn how many community bands there really are around the country and in communities. Just when I look at the state of New Jersey, there are quite a few, and every once in a while I'll hear of one that I didn't know existed, and it's just great to know that there's another community band, in that community. I'm a big proponent, not just of community bands, but community choirs and community orchestras. Especially music educators, I think that they should all be playing and maintaining their playing in community groups. It's just so important.
All right, so Keith, I ask all of my guests the following questions, and they've sort of taken on a life of their own. It's the opposite of a lightning round, because they're very big, broad questions. But the first of them is, where do you draw the line between healthy and unhealthy competition in music?
When it doesn't support the students and their musical and emotional growth. The competition aspect needs to be a positive experience, not just for the students, but for yourself and for your parents, your community. Sometimes I think directors need to ask themselves, why are we competing in this or at this level? is it for us or is it for our students? And I think that's an important question to ask.
Yeah. I loved competitions when I was a high school student.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. And I loved it as a director too. I mean, I was very, very competitive marching band director as well. But I also, I also went through a change. I was overdoing it at one point. And when my staff, has to tell me that they're burned out, because we're out every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then needing to make the decision to, and if they're burned out, then the students have to be getting burned out and the parents have to be getting burned out. So just simply taking away, say, Sunday competitions, and going out once a weekend instead of twice a weekend. I think there's a balance, and sometimes you're not in balance. And I certainly have been there when I wasn't in balance.
Speaking of balance, what a great segue. How do you find work-life balance, and how have you found it in your career as a music educator? Everyone laughs because none of us have it.
Nope. Yeah, please let me know when you find a good answer to that. I don't. I don't have that balance. I don't think I ever have. You think about it and you try to have it, but it depends on your personality. I'm a very, type A personality, and I just, over my career, just didn't say no to a lot of things. I just, you always say yes. Whether it's being a region president, a state president, an Eastern Division president. I mean, it keeps you, but at the same time, it's been what has allowed me to build relationships and have mentors and do the things that I've done and have the opportunities that I've had, because you give of yourself in leadership and organizing. Whether it's managing a band or volunteering with your MEA or organization to be a part of what their needs are. I mentioned before that my wife was also a high school band director. So having a spouse in the same profession has been really helpful. We know what we each other does. We know what our day job is like. I don't know if either of us can imagine being married to somebody in a completely different profession. Like that just seems. I don't know. You're able to be more appreciative and supportive and everything like that along the way. I think making time to do the things that you like to do, in my case, even when I make the time to do other things, I find that they're still all related in some way to what I'm doing, traveling, going to conferences, collaborating with people, the professional development stuff. It seems like it's never ending, but I don't want it to end. Speaking of the traveling piece, one of the best thing I've done in my career and in my life is taking students to Europe. That's what I spend my summers doing. I'm the head director of a gold tour of the American Music Abroad, and we take about 150 high school kids, band, choir, orchestra students to Europe every summer through 6-7 countries, and that's a lot of work, but it doesn't get old. My wife and I, again, are both directors on that tour. But it's what we spend our summers doing, and I can't imagine having a better summer gig.
For me, and I've listened to a lot of people, 138 guests now, talk to me about this question. And it's really difficult. And I'm being really reflective on this because I'm presenting on the podcast at Midwest this year.
Yeah.
And so, I've got to get up there in front of however many people are going to be in that session and talk about what I've learned from all of you. And, it's hard. But for me, I think there's been times in my life when I wanted to be the band director. I wanted to be the music professor, and that's it. And, now that I have children, I have to make sure that they come first, so long as it's not hurting those that love you and those you love.
Yeah.
The balance is what makes you happy, as you said.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a really difficult question.
But you're right. You're right on the money. My wife and I don't have kids because we've both been high school band directors. But we've had a lot of kids. We're dog people. We have our 2 dogs, and they keep us grounded too. So
yeah. I mean, you just have to find it for yourself. It's a very personal question.
Yep.
All right, this is a big question, Keith, but you are in a music education position. So what are the challenges that are facing music education in the 21st century, and how do we best meet those challenges?
I think opening the doors of the music classroom to engage more of our students is probably the biggest issue that I see. As we all know, that our band, choir, and orchestras only really service about 20% of our high school populations. And when you think about that other 80% that I mentioned before, how do we design new courses, open our doors? Let's just not be the band director, but let's be a music teacher and figure out how we can service more of our students with music education. That's probably the biggest thing that comes to my mind. I think striving to be a more culturally relevant teacher is a big thing that's happening currently, and is a need. Of course, meeting the needs of all students, that takes a lot. That differentiated instruction piece that we talk about, it's really what needs to be the way we teach. Not just run music or band rehearsals or full ensemble rehearsals without thinking of all the members of the ensemble as individual learners and what their needs are. And that kind of leads to, that creating a learning environment that's socially and emotionally appropriate for everyone. The social and emotional learning piece is a big topic right now that I think more people need to be sensitive to, learn about. There's some really good people out there around the country presenting at conferences on these topics, especially that social and emotional learning. Scott Edgar from the Midwest, he just did a full day of topics on that topic, of sessions at the NAFME conference down in Orlando 2 weeks ago. And so I think there's a lot of great people out there with great ideas to improve teaching and the classroom environment. I think you said ways of getting there or how best to meet them. I think also having mentors and keep searching out mentors in your profession. I mean, for everybody, you're never too old to have mentors, and being a forward thinker.
All right, Keith. So if I could give you a time machine and set it to the day of your high school graduation, what would you tell yourself?
I think you kind of threw me when you said high school graduation, because then I couldn't think about any other time. But I was thinking as a young teacher when starting the profession, was that strive to teach each and every student piece. I feel like the first maybe 8 to 10 years I was a band director, I was like bulk teaching, right? You're just teaching the band.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the foresight to really focus on the differentiated instruction. So that came about, third way into my teaching career. And then it became the main focus for the rest of my K-12 teaching. And I think always being kind, when you have the option of being right or being kind, choose kind. And especially on the podium as a director. Score study is another thing, like when you're a young teacher, you tend to learn the score on the podium, like the kids are learning the music. And it's so easy to do, and it's so easy to fall into on a day-to-day basis. When you're doing everything else under the sun. And so later in the career, and especially if you're doing, more difficult, more challenging music, when you can really get to know your scores and spend time with them, it makes all the difference in the world.
If you had a choice, what would be the final work for wind ensemble or band that you would want to conduct or perform or hear, and why?
A lyrical piece for sure, and something with expressive musical moments that speak to me. certainly something like Irish Tune or Magnum Mysterium come to mind. I've liked Eric Whitacre's music an awful lot. I think something that's choral or orchestral, and written for you. You're asking specifically about wind band, but I think those wind band pieces that either came from choral works or orchestral works have really reached me differently than other pieces. I like October an awful lot. I think if I had to pin one, I know it's very overdone or has been overdone a lot, but that doesn't diminish the fact that I really like the piece.
Oh, it's a beautiful piece of music.
Yeah. American Elegy is another one, of course, that I recently, and you may have had him on your program, Mark Stickney.
Yep.
You know Mark?
Yep.
So Mark recommended, he guest conducted my community band last year and recommended The Heart's Reflection by Daniel Elder. And that has become recently for me a favorite. I'm going to do it I've done it with an honor band and also with my community band. Some works by Julie Giroux, like One Life Beautiful and Rift and Wed, are two of the favorites that I've done in the last couple of years. I mentioned before my friend Steve Malillo as a composer. He has a piece from long ago called Never Forgotten, and he has several musical haikus that are just gems, and have spoken to me, like no other music in the wind band world. But I don't know. Those are just the thoughts off the top of my head. But maybe October.
I don't know the Elder. I don't know that. And Mark was one of my early guests. I'm gonna have to go check it out.
It's beautiful, and it's a choral piece. And Daniel Elder is a choral conductor. Composer, but he wrote that for wind band. If you're looking for like an October kind of piece, but it's not October, it's not nearly as long and it's a little more accessible, but has musical moments that are just joyous.
All right. Is there anything coming up that you'd like to share or promote, Keith?
Well, my community band's coming up with a concert in a week. It's called Sweets and Treats, and we're doing number of suites, from the Holstaff Suite and English Folk Song Suite and Nutcracker and a few other things, mixed with some jazz-oriented things, my favorite things. And we're looking forward to that concert. It's going to be at Stockton University in Galloway, New Jersey on Sunday, December 1st. Later in the year, we're going to have a side-by-side concert with a guest conductor, Dr. Lauren Reynolds from the University of Delaware, will be joining us in April for a program called Songs of Sailor and Sea. And the rest of this school year, I'll be at a lot of conferences. I'll be at the state conferences in New Jersey, New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Maine, as well as at Midwest in December, and going to my first NAMM conference in January. So I'm looking forward to the NAMM experience. And this summer, my American Music Abroad tour will be visiting 7 countries, and looking forward to the summer tour.
All right, Keith, how can people get in touch with you?
My website is keithwhodgson.com. And I have a lot of emails, and they'll all get to me, but probably the easiest one is my work email, khodgson, HODGSON, @uarts.edu.
Excellent. Keith, thanks so much.
Oh, absolutely. It's really been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.